You are now watching Cultural Survival's Global News Bulletin. Every month, Cultural Survival brings you the latest news impacting indigenous peoples across the globe. This June edition features important stories from Europe, North, Central, South America, Africa, Asia, and beyond. Starting news from USA. Archaeologists in northern Michigan, utilizing drone technology, have uncovered the largest intact ancient Native American agricultural site in the eastern United States, spanning over 300 acres. The discovery of sophisticated raised garden beds used for cultivating corn, beans, and squash challenges prior assumptions about pre-colonial indigenous farming practices. In Canada, the Heiltsuk Nation in British Columbia has ratified its first written constitution, thereby restoring traditional governance that was disrupted by colonial powers. This culmination of decades of efforts rooted in oral traditions asserts their stewardship of unceded territories. The Constitution shares power among hereditary leaders, the elected council, and the Women's Council, solidifying their unified voice and self-determination. Similarly, First Nations leaders across Canada are resisting Prime Minister Mark Carney's plan to fast-track projects, demanding full partnership and free, prior, and informed consent. Citing past movements, they warn that ignoring their constitutional rights will lead to legal challenges and protest, emphasizing the importance of a true collaboration over more consultation. In Australia, Victoria is leading Australia towards its first Indigenous treaty, aiming for a statewide agreement by June 2026. Despite national setbacks, the Victorian Minister for Treaty and First Nations people is seeking new legislation this year, aiming to secure a signed treaty by mid-2026, which would mark a significant step towards recognizing Indigenous sovereignty. In Solomon Island, the Solomon Island and Vanuatu are establishing the Melanesian Ocean Reserves, an ambitious 6 million square kilometer protected area. This indigenous-led initiative, announced at the UN Ocean Conference, aims to safeguard ancestral waters from exploitation and promote sustainable practices. Discussions with Papua New Guinea and New Caledonia are ongoing. News from South Africa. Nelson Mandela University's Professor Magda Miguzi and Quishan Chiefs Margaret Coetzee and Zenzil Quishan presented their research on Eastern Cape Indigenous Heritage at Italy's Festival delle Culture 2025. They showcased their documentary, Origin, Quishan Heritage Sites and Sense of Belonging, featuring interviews with 10 Quishan chiefs. In Kenya, Maasai women are spearheading innovative conservation efforts, blending traditional knowledge with entrepreneurial ventures. Facing drought and land degradation, their sustainable practices, supported by partnership with organizations like Ambo Cell Ecosystem Trust and the International Fund for Animal Welfare, are preserving both their environment and livelihoods. In Nepal, Nepal's Supreme Court has ordered all levels of government to align future laws and policies with the ILO Convention No. 169 and the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, including the principle of free, prior, and informed consent. This ruling, following a petition from Lawyers Association for Human Rights of Nepalese Indigenous Peoples, aims to fully implement international indigenous peoples' rights. In India, the Asian Development Bank has cancelled its $434 million loan for the Assam Solar Park. This victory for indigenous groups led by the Karbi Anglong Solar Power Project affected People's Rights Committee came after a year-long campaign against the project, which threatened to displace 20,000 families and violated land rights. Similarly, a coalition led by the Siang Indigenous Farmers Forum demands an immediate halt to the 11,500 megawatt Siang Upper projects in Arunachal Pradesh. They cite ecological devastation and severe impacts on indigenous communities, urging the withdrawal of forces, release of protesters, and upholding of free, prior, and informed consent and land rights. In Indonesia, a new report reveals Indonesia's booming nickel industry is causing widespread environmental damage and human rights abuses. Operations on Halmahera Island, home to the world's largest nickel mine, are linked to severe pollution, deforestation, and the displacement of indigenous communities, with critics urging government accountability over profit. In Malaysia, Sarawak Cultural Village offers an immersive glimpse into the diverse indigenous cultures of Borneo. This 17 acres living museum showcases the traditions of various ethnic groups through replica buildings, daily life demonstrations, performances, and local cuisine, making it an ideal destination for visitors attending the Rainforest World Music Festival this June. News from Nicaragua. Nicaragua's new law and presidential decree permits natural resource exploitations without prior consent from indigenous communities. This alarming move threatens ecosystems, undermines indigenous and Afro-descendants communities' autonomy, and jeopardizes their ancestral territories. In Ecuador, indigenous leaders convened in Quito, Ecuador, to demand the full implementation of Inter-American Court of Human Rights rulings. Organized by Sara Yaku, the summit highlights widespread government non-compliance with binding decisions protecting indigenous territorial and human rights across Latin America. In Panama's Arima indigenous community reports forced displacement due to increased military presence since May 31. Helicopters and security forces have created a climate of fear, forcing families to flee their homes and seek refuge in the mountains amid electricity outages and alleged government reprisals for defending ancestral lands. In Colombia's new decree 488, spurred by indigenous mobilization, grants self-governance to indigenous territorial entities. This landmark law empowers communities to manage resources, projects, and objects to culturally harmful development, marking a historic shift towards greater autonomy. In Argentina, indigenous communities in Argentina are mobilizing against a wave of evictions from ancestral lands. The appeal of Law 26160 has sparked a political and judicial offensive, prompting urgent appeals for the recognition and protection of their rights, both nationally and internationally guaranteed. In Peru, following 13 deaths, indigenous leaders are demanding urgent action against unchecked mining in Patag. Citing the Amazon mandate, they condemned gold extraction fueled by indigenous blood, mercury, and environmental devastation, calling it Peru's new silent war. In Chile, a proposed transfer of 240,000 hectares to the Mapuche people for territorial reparation faces a strong opposition in Chile. Despite a recent Peace Commission report, right-wing rejection, and ongoing demands for demilitarization and prisoner release cast doubt on the resolution of this long-standing conflict. That is all for this edition of Cultural Survival's Global News Bulletin. Stay tuned for our next broadcast. For more information on the rights of indigenous peoples, visit cs.org and follow Cultural Survival on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Threads, and Blue Sky.